Hello and welcome to my little bookish corner of the internet. My name is Harriet. Today I'm going to be talking through the books that I read in the month of August. Another very quick month for me, I think, because I've been working really long hours at work, which is fine. I'm getting paid for it. It's not like I'm doing overtime for no money. I am definitely getting paid for it, and that is a wonderful, lovely thing. But yeah, it's just been a crazy month. It's gone so quickly. And I didn't think I'd read as many books as what I did actually manage to read. It felt like I was going through quite a few different reading slumps and I wasn't enjoying every book that I was picking up. But apparently that is not the case. So I'm going to show off the books that I read and talk through them, my thoughts on them. Unfortunately, I did have one DNF this month, which is the one that I'm going to start with. So this was going to be my non-fiction read for August. I actually had to end up picking a different one because I got about 30 pages into this and realised that it's just not what I wanted it to be. So that is Hidden Nature, A Voyage of Discovery by Alice Fowler. I thought this was going to be a really lovely book following this one person's journey through the canal network on a little inflatable kayak, and I just thought it was going to be all about nature and lovely wonderful things like that would make me feel a little bit closer to nature, as I am working in an office now and sometimes it can feel a little bit like you are separated from it, literally sat in a tin box all day. So I was hoping this would be a little release from that, and it absolutely wasn't. For me, I just found it to be too self-indulgent and talking about this person's life outside of the canal network, which is the complete opposite of what I thought this book would be. Yes, maybe I didn't give enough time, but I just don't have time in my life to read books that I'm not enjoying, and I just knew after 30 pages that I wasn't going to enjoy this. So I did unfortunately put it down, but I'm going to give it back to the book swap that I got it from and hope that someone else can enjoy it. And now we can get into all the books that I actually did enjoy in the month of August. We'll start with the one that I was actually reading throughout July and then ended up finishing in August, and it was a buddy read with someone on my Instagram. And it was really lovely. We're actually going to read the third book next month as well, so that would be really great. But it is the second book in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb called Royal Assassin. I can't talk about this book too much because obviously it's the second in a series, so there's not much more I can say. Apart from that, I really enjoyed it. I found it very entertaining. The characters felt very realistic. Robin Hobb is very good at creating those realistic characters. There was one relationship that I didn't particularly love within this book, but I do think that that has now passed, and I found that the book was good enough that I could ignore that, and it still ended up being a 5-star read from me, which just shows how good the rest of the book is, that I can completely ignore quite a major relationship that is in the story that I didn't like. But the main characters are just phenomenal. There's more magic and more depth into Fitz, who's the main character, his different abilities and his powers, and I just really loved it. It was a really long read. It took over a month because we were reading it quite slowly. Obviously we were both busy people, we've got other stuff to do, and I was reading this between other books as well. But I'm so glad that I read this one, and I feel like I might be reading the third one a little bit quicker just because I really want to devour the rest of this trilogy. I want to know what's going to happen. There's so much political intrigue, so many plot twists. Such a great medieval fantasy series, and I definitely recommend it if you are interested in picking it up. It's a little bit slower than most fantasy series that I've read, but I am super used to more character-driven stories as opposed to plot-driven, so this was something that really worked out for me, and I did enjoy it very much. And then I finished the 2 Disney books that I really wanted to read this month, so I'm super pleased about that. They are both YA books within the same series. I don't know how many books are going to be in this series. It's a YA series called The Queen's Counsel. So the first book was Rebel Rose, and this one is following Belle after the events of Beauty and the Beast, the film that we all know. What is going on in her life as she starts to realise that she needs to become a royal leader now that she is with the Beast, whose name is different in this compared to the film. Really weird. His name is Prince Adam in the canon, and in this one he's got a different name. Oh, it's Leo, which is fine. I don't mind that they changed it. It was just a bit of an odd choice, especially since it is by Disney. It's published by Disney. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. Very much darker than what I was anticipating, for sure, but definitely not as violent as the second book, which is following Mulan. So this one is Feather and Flame. Personally, of the two, I think I preferred the first one just because none of the plot devices had been used before. The second one does reuse a couple of the plot devices. It's definitely very like twisty, and you can't trust any of the characters, so you're always suspicious about the characters. I did feel like between the 2 books this one didn't do it as well, but I really loved Mulan's story, so they both got the same rating. They both ended up being a 4-star read for me, and I definitely recommend them for anyone that wants a slightly darker take on Disney tales. They're definitely not appropriate for children. They are definitely part of a YA series. I feel like anyone that likes Disney would really enjoy this. And I believe they're written by the same authors that did the Twisted Tales and the Villain series that came out as well. So if you enjoyed those or were thinking about getting those, maybe pick these up, because there's only 2 in the series so far. I believe the next one is going to be about Jasmine, which I really do want to pick up. So really pleased that I read these, and I'm excited to continue on with the series. They're also really easy to read, which is just a bonus. The next book that I'm going to talk about, unfortunately, I didn't love, but I picked it up from the charity shop not long ago at all, and I just really wanted to read it because I was just super intrigued in kind of a dark way. So it is The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty by Anne Rice. This is a very dark erotica series. I don't think I'll be continuing on with the series personally. I thought this was going to be kind of romantic in a sexy way, but instead it was kind of a little bit like torture porn. Unfortunately, I did end up reading the whole thing because I thought that maybe there would be a bit more plot to it, and maybe it would go a bit further than what the first 2 pages showed me. But every single page is filled with some kind of erotica, so if you do like that, then you can pick this up. But there's definitely some content warnings. There's definitely a bit of a on the consent side of things. Obviously, this is a slightly older book and was written in a slightly different generation, I suppose. But even I was very shocked at some of the content that was in this book. I don't know if I can recommend it. I ended up giving it a 2-star rating because I did undeniably enjoy it because I finished it and obviously couldn't put it down, but I don't know if I would ever recommend this to anyone. I'm glad that I gave it a go, but yeah, it kind of was a little bit of a waste of my time. If anyone does have any recommendations for some dark fairy tale retellings, please leave them down below. I've read one about Red Riding Hood. I've obviously read the YA Disney books as well. But yeah, if you have any recommendations that you can leave down below, please do, because I'd be very interested. The next book that I read is unfortunately a bit of a make or break one for me in terms of the author. This has ultimately made me not want to read any more by this author, not because it's a bad book, but just because I've realised that it's not really doing anything for me anymore. And that is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I don't know if it's because this book is so hyped up, and I put it off for such a long time reading it. It's been about a year since I picked this edition up, and everyone's always talking about it. It was such a big thing last summer, so I had unintentionally hyped it up in my head, and maybe I was expecting a bit more than what I got from it, but this just didn't really do a lot for me. So we're following 4 main characters, I would say. 2 of them are linked by friendship, and then they have other people in their lives that eventually kind of intermingle and meet each other and their lives cross. And I don't know what I was expecting from this, but it just felt a little bit too preachy and felt a little bit pretentious. I don't mind the weird punctuation within Rooney's books, that doesn't bother me too much. But the writing style, there is no plot at all. It is just about the characters, which is fine. I mentioned earlier that I do get on with character-driven books very well usually, but this was just a bit boring. I didn't hate it. I'm probably sounding like I did. I mean, I read the whole thing, and originally I think I gave it a 3-star rating. I would probably now drop that down to a 2.5 because I just don't see myself ever picking this up. I don't know if I, again, would recommend it to anyone personally. I just don't know really what happened in this book that would make people recommend it. If you did like this book, please let me know down below what your favourite things are and what you loved about it, because I would be interested to know. It's always good to get other opinions on books. I just find it's really good to sit down and really think about a book that you've read, why you didn't like it, why other people might like it. Just find it very interesting. But yeah, this just wasn't for me, and I do hope that whoever gets this at the book swap does enjoy it, but it just made me realise that maybe I don't want to read any more of Rooney's books. I've read the main 3, Conversations with Friends, Normal People, and now this one here, and yeah, I just don't think I'm ever going to reread any of them, so I don't think there is a reason for me to pick her books up anymore. Another book that I read was 4 Ways to Forgiveness by Ursula Le Guin. This is a 4 short story collection following 4 different women on these different planets. It's set within the Hainish cycle, which essentially is a sci-fi series where all of the stories are linked, but you don't have to read them in a particular order, and all of the humans or species that were in the novels all came from the Haines, who are us humans on Earth. And it's set in the distant future where the Hainish people have genetically modified human beings and have put them onto different planets, and different societies form, and different types of humans and aliens, and it's all following different characters. This one, as I say, follows 4 main women, but there are other characters kind of intermingled into the stories. And it was just a really fun, very interesting read. There was one story that I liked more than the others, so unfortunately I couldn't give it a 5-star rating because I didn't love the other 3 just as much. But it did end up being a 4-star read for me. I really enjoyed it. All of her science fiction is more character driven. It hasn't got too many scientific terms in there, so it's quite easy to understand. But I have found with Le Guin's writing, at the start of the book, you're probably going to be wondering, what the hell is going on? I don't understand any of this. Then after about, I would say 20 to 30 pages in, suddenly it will just sink in and you know exactly what happened before. So I feel like her books have got a lot of reread value. I also completely understand why people may not enjoy her books. They are quite slow and they are quite hard to get into, but once you get into them, I feel like there is so much in them. There's so much information, there's so much character development. I just really, really love her writing, and I'm super glad that I read this one. And then there are two more books that I read that I don't have with me at the moment. So we've got Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. This was a super fun, really interesting dive into Norse mythology, which I don't know too much about apart from obviously the Marvel films like Thor. Neil's writing is always very accessible and very fun, really lovely to read in the summer sun, and a very short read as well. Can't say too much about it apart from that it made me more interested in Norse mythology and all of the myths and legends. It is written more like a story style, so it isn't a non-fiction. It's definitely a fictional take on these really old myths. Just makes it a little bit easier to read than the older texts. So I really did enjoy this one. It did end up being a 5-star read for me, and I can definitely see myself rereading it in the future. And the other book that I read was my non-fiction read that was actually successful, and that is The Wild Silence by Raynor Wynn. This is the second book that Raynor has written. I think there is a third one coming out. So the first one, The Salt Path, was following Moth and Raynor's walk across the Salt Path and their journey into homelessness and how they deal with chronic illness. Just a really emotional read, but really focused in on nature and being present and this crazy walk that they did. It was such a wonderful, beautiful book and a very tough act to follow. So The Wild Silence follows the events afterwards and about getting the book published, what made Raynor want to get the book published, what she originally wrote it for. This one I would say is a little bit more emotional but doesn't focus in as much on the nature, which is kind of what I was hoping for when I was reading it. I did want a little bit more of that nature writing because she is very, very, very good at it. Such a gorgeous writer. But yeah, this one just didn't quite hit the same spot as the first book, so I couldn't give it a 5-star rating, but I can give it a 4-star, and I would definitely recommend it if you're more interested in Moth and Ray's relationship and what happens after the events of Salt Path. Just think it's very interesting. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in the month of August. As I say, it flew by. I don't know where the time has gone. I also don't know how I managed to read so many books because I've just been working so much. I only get about an hour after work now to chill before I have to go to bed and wake up and then start work again. It's a vicious cycle at the moment, but as I'm filming this, it's the bank holiday weekend, so that is always a nice thing, enjoying 3 days off. I hope you all had a really good reading month. Please let me know what your favourite book from the month was. Mine was definitely Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I'm so pleased that I'm getting through this trilogy. I know it's a very big trilogy, there's lots of pages to read, but I'm super pleased with the progress and very, very happy that I finally got around to reading it. But yeah, that's everything from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!